Good morning. I hope everybody's ready to start this book. I hope those of you who have started reading are enjoying it. And we're just going to kind of do some background information today, and we'll kind of get into the plot a little bit more as we're going here. I'll try to do what I've done on the other books and give you both some analysis, background information, and just cover some basic plots. We're sticking with the rubric, I think, of character, conflict, connection, and theme. As always, let's do a quick overview. Remember that the book review is due today at 11:59 p.m. Writing Lab D, Aaron, Jonah, Dale, and Rachel. We're going to just kind of keep going through the 30th here, and the page numbers for the reading assignments are up on screen. And then April 30th, next Friday, Writing Lab E, and it's Natalie, Jordan, Alyssa, and Andre. The subtitle of the book is The Sixth World, and I think it's important to be a little bit curious about what the sixth world is. Why should one call something the sixth world? Okay, and I think it's key to understanding some of the premises behind the book and some of the things that Roanhorse is doing in the book. All right. And there's our hints to it throughout the book. I'm just going to kind of give you a quick overview of everything that we can talk about with the idea of the sixth world. And again, I'm just going to make a push for everybody to work on being curious. I think one of the things about critical writing and critical thinking is being curious. So, why subtitle this book The Sixth World? Why call it the Sixth World series? In Navajo tradition, the first world was the Black World. And the Black World was a small landmass. It was surrounded by burning resin. It was populated by insects. And at the very, very beginning, perhaps the insects couldn't fly because Dragonfly is the one who suggests they have wings. And Locust finds a crack that allows insects to fly to Blue World. So we start with Black World. We're flying to Blue World. We're into the second world. The second world was populated by birds who warned the insects not to eat the birds' food. And everything was peaceful until the insects ran out of food. Then there was a huge war. It doesn't take much imagination to understand that the birds won. And Locust, as Locust is wont to do in this story, leads the insects from the second world, from the Blue World, into the third world, into the Yellow World. And once they get to the third world, or Yellow World, they discover that there's both animals and humans there. They discover that everyone is speaking the same language, that everyone, animals and humans, have feet and claws, teeth, and the wings of insects, but that the humans could remove the wings like one removes a coat. Once again, there's starvation. And they get gifts from mountain lion, wolf, bluebird, and hummingbird. You'll notice that the number 4 is going to run through a lot of what's going on here, and it's going to be part of the sacred element of most native traditions. 4 directions, and in this case, these 4 animals. They find out that they don't know how to get blessings, and so they don't know how to get enough food to grow, and they are starving. And they start looking for a new world, but they can't find any cracks. In all of the previous worlds, they've been able to find cracks. Locust has been able to lead them through. They finally see 4 faces who call, and they illustrate how to get into the world. And the 4 faces, you'll notice, are first woman, first girl, first man, and first boy. The Navajo followed first woman. The bird people followed first girl. The animal people followed first man, and the insects followed first boy. When they get to this fourth world, into this black and white world, they discover that there were other tribes are already there, and the Navajo are to learn from them. You'll also see a dichotomy. You've got Coyote the trickster and Badger the hardworking. And in this world, there's also the flood, and I'll cover the flood separately, if I remember correctly. But you'll see this trickster and hardworking, and you'll see Coyote, and Coyote is one of the characters in the book. All right? I'm sorry, I won't cover it separately. Here it is. The flood is also mentioned in the book on page 70. The Navajo story about the flood have Coyote and Water Monster gambling. Coyote cheats, and as he cheats, he wins Water Monster's fur coat. What Coyote doesn't know, and what Water Monster apparently forgot, is that Water Monster's babies are in the pocket of the fur coat. Water Monster asks for the babies to be returned, or the coat to be returned. Coyote refuses. And so Water Monster creates a flood. And the water keeps rising and rising and rising, as in every flood story of mythology ever. And everyone needs to escape on the bamboo chute. Turkey saves corn. So one of the food sources has a sacred element to it because it was saved from the flood by Turkey. Locust, as he has done several other times, creates a hole, and you'll notice that Coyote is a trickster. He is not totally evil, or at least not always evil. He, in order to save his skin, is willing to work to save everybody else's skin as well, and he and Badger enlarge a hole, and everyone gets into the fifth world. And when we get into the fifth world, the creatures come in first, the other tribes come in second, the 32 Navajo clans come in third, and again, if you've read the first 10, 15 pages, the concept of clans is an important element of this book. Then First Woman comes through. The people notice that Coyote has been wearing this fancy fur coat, and they start putting two and two together. So they put the fur coat in a boat. They put the boat out in the middle of the water. Water Monster reclaims the babies, and Water Monster never bothers the people again. That's the fifth world. The natural disasters, the building of the wall, all of those things that the book discusses then create the sixth world. The setting of the book is now taking the world we live in, destroying it, and creating yet a new world, a dystopian world, a world in which all this bad crap is going to happen. The second thing I want to talk about is what the heck are we reading? I did this with detective novels. We've read two of those, and this obviously is not a detective novel. We have also read a memoir / history / biography or family history. This isn't any of those. And so I want to kind of run through and make sure that we're all on the same page talking about what we're reading. And what we're reading, I think, falls into the idea of a fantasy. And fantasies, like detective novels, can get broken up into a lot of different categories. So let's run through some of those. First of all is high fantasy. It's going to have a magical environment with its own rules. It's going to be epic. And I realize we've taken the word epic in the 21st century and done a lot of different things with it. But it's going to have kings, and it's going to have armies, and it's going to have large battles. And so Game of Thrones, Lord of the Rings, those sorts of things, I think, fall into the idea of high fantasy. There's also called low fantasy. Low fantasy, we have the real world, the one we live in right now. We have some magic happening, and we've got things like Toy Story. You close the door, the toys come to life. You open the door, the toys aren't moving. The real world rules apply, but when the real world kind of walks away, then the fantasy world rules apply. There's things called contemporary fantasy. You have the real world. You have magical creatures who break the plane between the magical world and the real world. Harry Potter is the perfect example. There's the world of the witches and Hogwarts. There's the world of, where Harry is living under the steps, our world. And in these two, they rarely cross over unless Voldemort is waging war and the people in Harry's world have to tell the people in our world that Voldemort's on the march again. And there's the train station, and they walk through the pillar to get from one side to the other. There are planes that people can cross over. But Harry Potter falls into this contemporary fantasy. Then there's mythic fantasy. It has roots in myth or in other folklore. It draws on the tropes from myths. And so one of my favorite books is American Gods, where all sorts of gods are involved. And there's kind of this war between the spiritual gods and technology. Percy Jackson just takes all of the Greek myths and applies it to, a children's story, a young adult story. This probably can fall into the mythic fantasy because we're dealing with Navajo myths. However, there's also something called urban fantasy. Usually it's in an urban environment. This novel doesn't really have an urban environment, but we'll take the biggest city possible as the urban environment. There's a hidden supernatural underworld. There's lots of pop cultural references. And so you take a story like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, or you take a movie like Highlander, or the television series Highlander, and you have an urban fantasy. As I said, this is perhaps a contemporary mythic urban fantasy. There's epic kings, armies, large battles. The magic is not confined to the real world or the other world. The magical stuff is all kind of dealt with as clan powers and things like that. So there's roots in myth and other folklore. We'll talk about some of the pop cultural references. And there's a place called the Shalimar that has a hidden supernatural underworld. So for right now, we're going to call it an urban, a mythic urban fantasy. The daily writing, just take a couple of minutes, write your experience with science fiction or fantasy. If you don't read it, explain why. If you do read it, explain why. Tell me what you like about it. Remember Writing Lab on Friday. Friday also, very, very quickly, please be listening. We'll be making the assignment for the one-page paper that deals with an element of the story, just like we had the reaction paper for Henrietta Lacks. So please pay attention on Friday. Please watch the video and get that paper turned in on time. Hope everybody has a good day, and we'll see some of you Friday and a lot more of you on Monday.